Warning: Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue and Geek, where two more white guys on the internet give their unsolicited opinions on all things geekdom and pop culture. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Tyler.
And today we're talking about Marvel's The Falcon and Winter Soldier, created by Malcolm Spellman and starring Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. Tyler, you want to give us a bit of background?
A little bit of background. Well, like WandaVision, this is post-blip. Where the world is adjusting to Thanos' invasion, and I guess it's a genocide. It's bigger than a genocide, really. And it follows Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, and Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, as they adjust to their roles in the post-blip world, while also facing down a new threat.
I know that Sam took on the mantle of Captain America for a while in the comics. I don't know enough about that comic series, though, to say if this is actually based on that or
burying the lead. Huh? You're burying the lead.
Am I? I don't know enough about the comics. I was just asking you for the background segment because you're the background guy.
In the comics, he takes over because a villain drained Steve of his serum and turned him into an old man.
Ah.
So Steve was like, "Here, Sam, take the shield."
You ever notice how in Endgame... So, just a quick recap. Spoilers for Endgame, I guess, but we're going to spoil that anyway, and we've already spoiled it for WandaVision. It ends with Steve going back in time and reliving his life with Peggy Carter, and then growing old together and coming back to the present, and now he's an old man and he gives his shield over to Sam. The way they explain time travel in Endgame, though, is that once you go back in time, you're not on the same timeline, you've changed timelines, which means that Steve had to go back in time, relive his entire life with Peggy Carter, then make a dramatic return earlier than when he left to the original timeline, and just sit on a bench and wait for somebody to notice him. Because
I hope Sam sees me over here.
Before I die of a heart attack.
Hello?
Hurry up! I've been waiting here for half an hour. I'm running out of bread for these ducks at the lake. But yeah, I just thought that was funny because that's the only way it makes any sense. He couldn't have grown old and then come back to the current time by the way they explain it.
Yeah, it falls apart with any kind of thought, but that's just the risk you run with time travel. But thematically, it's a good payoff. Yeah. So, who cares?
It's a good conclusion for Steve. He finally gets his happy ending. But let's talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, though.
Yes. It's not just, an action-adventure series with, Bucky and Sam. It's also probably the Marvel property, the MCU property, to go hardest into socio-political topics as well. They've dabbled in it before with, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War, Iron Man 3, and stuff like that, but
they pull no punches here. Well,
I've read some hot takes that it does pull punches, but I think it's gone farther.
We will talk
about political commentary than any other MCU movie so far. Yeah. So
we'll talk about it. I do have some issues with the themes that they address as well, but we'll talk about it. We mentioned this in the Superman Smashes the Klan one. Again, as I say at the beginning of every episode, we are two white dudes on the internet giving our unsolicited opinions on pop culture. So when it comes to issues of race and stuff, we have a lot of privilege. And we are going to try our best and have these discussions because you can't learn anything unless you have discussions like this. So take what we say with a grain of salt. We're trying our best to learn, and we just want to do our best to get our voices out there and help support important causes.
Yeah, it's kind of a big old fat coinky-dink that we're talking about another thing with heavy racial overtones.
Yeah, is it?
We were going to
Or
cover
is
a
the world
completely...
just shitty? Is the world just shitty and we have to talk about these things?
Well, we were going to cover something completely different this time, but Isaac had to catch up on Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's like, scrap everything. Yeah. We're going to talk about this, and I'm like, all right. So it just so happens that we talk about two superhero properties with
unfortunately
racial overtones back to back.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can release them separately, like have a buffer in between them. We haven't released anything yet. Oh, so that's a little behind the scenes work. We haven't released anything. So whenever you all are hearing this will probably be like weeks or months after it's actually...
Yeah. It's already irrelevant as we're talking about it now, and it'll be even more irrelevant when it finally comes out.
You're listening to my ghost. I died 7 years ago.
We're both dead.
Yeah, we've been dead for 18 years, and they just found the archives.
But people have to hear this.
Yeah.
But to actually explain what the hell we're talking about as far as racial topics with Falcon and Winter Soldier, Sam Wilson is a black man.
Yep.
And Steve, he gave him the shield because, he's the best man for the job. That's what Steve felt. So if you can't put two and two together, it explores the topic of what it's like for a black man to think about, struggle with, and eventually decide to take up the mantle of Captain America.
Yeah. Let's do a little bit of recap. As always, we have spoilers whenever we do these reviews. So the series starts out with us learning about this group called the Flag Smashers that are a bunch of refugees they were the people who survived the blip, as they call it, aka the snap from Infinity War. They were around for 5 years when everybody else disappeared. They basically had almost a utopia. People who were like historically kicked out of places, refugees from places. Everybody was gone, and all these countries were like, hey, we need people to come in, do work, take up where all these people were lost. And these people built lives for themselves, and then when everybody comes back, this group called the Global Repatriation...
is it the GRC?
GRC?
The Global Repatriation Committee or something like that?
Something like that. Basically, this big government agency is like, hey, you have to give back all the people who disappeared their lives, even if it means kicking out all these people who were still around. So the Flag Smashers are people who are like, no, that's bullshit. We built our own lives after all of this time. One world, one people. They don't want countries or governments telling them what to do anymore. They're basically radical anarchists who are saying, hey, we don't want a government controlling us and telling us what to do.
Yeah, no borders, like none of the, artificial bullcrap that humanity has constructed to keep people divided. What it boils down to is that despite the cosmic tragedy that was Thanos wiping out half of all of existence, for those 5 years, Earth was, in many ways, actually doing better for some people, and they wanted to keep it that way. And it's the Global Repatriation Council, not committee.
Council. Oh, big difference. Big difference. Councils and committees.
We have to be accurate. We have to seem, eventually, like we know what we're talking about.
Eventually, when we have listeners, we will start a segment called Actually, where they'll just email us like all the corrections for things, and we will just read them off in the next episode. But anyway... all that's background. Sam is trying to hunt down these Flag Smashers, stop them because they're stealing things, they're hurting people,
committing terrorist acts.
And in the process, we discover that they have 8 of them, I think, have taken a version of the super soldier serum. So there are actual super soldiers out there. That's a big plot point for this series because the super soldier serum becomes like this analogy for government like militarization of people and the way that people militarize themselves. Basically like the idea of supremacy, the idea of like we are going to enforce our ideology on everyone else. So everybody who has like the serum in them sort of becomes like an analogy for that along throughout the show, and it kind of analyzes like there's one point where they talk about how the serum just makes you more of who you are. So for Steve Rogers, it made him like more of a good person, and for like the people who are doing this, it made them more violent, more radical, more wanting to like enforce their will onto others. Let's talk about. Should we talk about Bucky first before we?
Yeah, we can go Bucky. There's a lot going on in a 6-episode series.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that because of COVID, they had to scrap like an entire subplot, which probably would have given it a longer episode count.
Well, it's good because there is a lot already going on here. I think it may be already a little overstuffed with all the stuff they try to fit in, so...
Bucky. Okay, you said Bucky.
Yeah.
Let's do Bucky first.
Let's do Bucky first.
Bucky is just still kind of trying to find his way in the modern world. He's dealing with a lot of trauma from when he was the Winter Soldier. He's seeing a therapist, and
yeah, he's mandated. He's like court mandated to see a therapist.
And he has a list where he visits people that he wronged as Winter Soldier to try and sort of take not so much take responsibility, because I mean he was brainwashed, but just sort of take responsibility for his own emotions so he can move on and so he can heal.
Yeah, and it's interesting because at the beginning of the show we see that instead of doing it that way, he's using it to like find all of the Hydra agents that he helped along the way and hunt them down, and he's basically sticking to like the whole violence angle of it instead of using it as a healing mechanism. It's like, I'm going to use this to make things right by going out and hunting down all these Hydra agents who used me, which isn't necessarily wrong, but he's like avoiding the harder aspect of actually looking for his own like sense of peace and his own sense of redemption.
He befriended an elderly man who is the father of one of his victims when he was the Winter Soldier, and they have a cute relationship, a fun relationship, but there's that inner tension with Bucky of like the inner turmoil of, oh, I killed his son, should I tell him, can I tell him? And he's just he's Bucky, he's keeping people at arm's length. Little pun there because his metal arm. But
what's great about this series is we finally get to see Bucky as a character.
Yes, thank God.
Bucky has been a plot device in the MCU for too long. In the Winter Soldier, the first like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, he's there, but he's brainwashed the whole time, and he's the only reason we really care about what happened to Bucky and like all the trauma that happened to him is because like we care about Cap, we care about Steve Rogers, and we know Steve Rogers cares about Bucky. Bucky hasn't developed enough as a character at this point where we're like, oh no, I really want to see Bucky get like his life back together and everything. It's really more like, I really want to see Steve Rogers get his friend back, or more than friend, according to the internet.
I think Winter Soldier does enough to make you sympathize with him.
Yeah,
you see you see flashbacks of him being taken from the snow and experimented on, and then his hypnosis, and but there's a lot of physical acting with him in the Winter Soldier. Like there's a lot of pain behind the eyes, and
but it's all very empathy for your fellow man. It's not like, oh, I know this character and I understand what he's going through personally. It's a lot more like empathy. Like if seeing anyone go through that kind of torture would be shitty, And
there's the whole, oh, can Steve reach him at the climax? And he does. And then at the end, Bucky's able to kind of break from his conditioning and not kill Steve and run away, which leads to Civil War. I don't want to get into a whole tangent about Civil War, but one of my hottest of hot takes about the MCU is that I'm not a big Civil War fan. I don't think it's all that good.
It kicked Tyler off the MCU for about 4 years, and I had to drag him kicking and screaming back into the MCU.
There's a lot of reasons I could go into right now, but they don't, in my opinion, they don't utilize Bucky in the way that the end of Winter Soldier promises.
They regress him again because Baron Zemo gets a control of him and like manages to reprogram him briefly to make him, kill people again. So he basically goes back and has to redo his whole character arc again from the Winter Soldier when he was, brainwashed. They have to unbrainwash him again, and then Steve spends his whole time trying to protect him from the law and Tony Stark and everything. So, yeah, Bucky kind of gets the shaft in Civil War again just because, like, hey, we're going back to the brainwashing element. And I guess that kind of shows, like, how deeply entrenched it is into him, but it also doesn't really give us the chance to see who Bucky is as a person to understand his struggle until later on. In Infinity War, he is apparently hanging out with the Wakandans. They give him a new metal arm. He supposedly found a temporary peace, but like we don't see enough of him again to really figure out who he is as a character, what he wants to do, why, like what impact being brainwashed had on him. He's just kind of there, helping in the fight.
Just a battle, basically. He only shows up to fight.
So this is the first time where Bucky Barnes, aside from, I guess, the first Captain America where he was a side character, this is the first time since the first Captain America movie where Bucky Barnes actually gets to be a character. And, like, we get to see his internal turmoil in ways that aren't just, oh, I'm fighting my brainwashing. It's like, how do I deal with the guilt of what I've done? How do I deal with having to work with someone else, working with Sam? How do I deal with the fact that, like, Steve picked Sam over me, and then Sam discarded the shield? Like, there's a lot of turmoil going on with Bucky in terms of, like, who am I as a person now? And that's great. This series definitely needed to develop Bucky as a character.
Mm-hmm. And that's his whole kind of arc over the course of the series. It's not as prominent as Sam's is, but it's still important because it finally makes you understand who Bucky is as a person.
Yeah.
Post, supposed death in World War II and how many years he was the Winter Soldier. He's a likable guy. He's kind of a stick in the mud, kind of ornery, but not in a dickish way. Just kind of you see your
kind of a dick, but not too standoffish. He's standoffish, I think, is the best way to describe him, because, like, he clearly wants to keep people out of his head, which is understandable, considering all the people who got in his head when he was brainwashed. You definitely see him slowly learning to trust Sam as a partner, instead of just, like, judging him and not telling him why he should have taken the shield or anything.
Which comes into the whole kind of buddy cop aspects trope of the show, which is fun because he's a gregarious guy. He's more lighthearted. He likes to joke around, and when he when he pokes and prods Bucky, it's some of the actual, like, funniest stuff in the show. Because like Bucky just gets a pissy look on his face and doesn't know how to respond.
Sam's also a great character for Bucky because Sam was, like, not a therapist, but he, like, led an ex-veteran support group for a long time, and you get to see that side of him come out here, and it's a great dynamic with him and Bucky because you can see Sam getting, like, fed up with Bucky's shit, even though he kind of understands what Bucky's going through. But at the same time, like, you can see he also wants to help Bucky and help other people because, like, he's not, like, just a blind soldier, kind of like how Steve was early in the MCU. That's like the big difference, I think, between Steve's arc as Captain America and Sam's arc as Captain America here is, like, Steve starts out with, like, this idealistic view of, I need to do my part to do what's right, so I'm going to join the military. And then, like, Steve slowly throughout the MCU learns, oh, I can't trust the government all the time. They're not always going to have the people's best interests in mind. I have to stand up for what's right, even if it's against the law. And Sam's is more along the line, it's like more of the opposite. It's more like, I have a deep understanding of how messed up and corrupt the government is, of how it's screwed with people, specifically, like, black people in America. And, like, I know the terrible things that this country has done, but I still have to stand up for it anyway, because, like, we have to make the world a better place for everyone, and we can't do that through, like, just blindly attacking everybody and not believing in anything.
Yeah, and that kind of boils down to just, the eras in which they were brought up. With Steve, the World War II of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very much kind of painted very broadly as, like, we gotta fight this evil, it's the just thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's more black and white, whereas, Sam was a soldier, over in the Middle East. It's a completely different sort of political underpinning to those conflicts. And I've read some criticisms that Sam in the show is, like, too much of a centrist or too much of a government yes man, and I don't see that at all. I mean, he wants to do things by the book, but he's not a lackey. When he thinks something's up, he speaks his mind. He still breaks protocol. He still does what he thinks is right over just taking orders from the suits.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this later, about a different character who shows up, but there definitely is there's definitely a solid argument to be made that Sam made the morally wrong choice by becoming Captain America, because, like, this show doesn't shy away from all the terrible things historically that happened to black people in America, and the things that are continuing to happen to black people in America, and even beyond just the racism, the, like, continued military presence, and how, like world police is basically a form of terrorism that American, like, military does, and, like, there is a solid argument to be made that Sam made the wrong moral choice. I can see people, like, seeing him become Captain America at the end and being genuinely upset. I understand that position. I think for the theme of this show it works because he's trying to make the message of we have to do better, and he wants to take on that symbol knowing that even though people will hate him, he's trying to make it a better place to live. But there's definitely a moral argument of saying, Sam, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't take on the symbol of a nation that's done so much and is continuing to do so much corruption in the world.
Yeah, God, there's a lot of different angles to come at it from, which is a mark of a good show, in my opinion. So much of it is about the legacy of Captain America, not just Steve, but the iconography of it.
Yeah.
What it means, what it symbolizes, the shield, like
to be an American superhero.
Yeah, the shield comes with all of this baggage that Steve himself didn't intend or didn't endorse.
Yeah.
But just by the way the world works and how people work and how governments work and how people are trampled on, oppressed, forgotten, there's just all these unintended sort of tendrils that come out of that shield.
Yeah.
That, he just wasn't aware of. And to an extent, you can call him naive. It does a good job of making Steve not infallible, but not to the point where you feel like the show is, kind of poo-pooing his legacy or his character.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing to do for a character that doesn't even show up physically at all. There is no Steve cameo or anything, but his presence is still very much throughout the whole thing.
You can feel his absence. Like, why he's not, why he's not there, and you can feel, like, the impact that it has on everybody. Like, the fact that Steve Rogers is no longer there has changed the world. And that's great. Like I said when we did WandaVision, I love this, like, post-blip stuff where they're actually exploring the impact of, like, what it had on the world. We should move on and talk about Walker.
To talk about Walker, I think we need to first kind of explain why Sam decided in the beginning of the series to not keep the shield, because that leads directly into Walker.
Okay, go ahead then.
No, you take this one, because I have more to say about Walker than I do.
Okay, at the very beginning, he says he doesn't want to take the shield because... Fuck, I've forgotten.
We're terrible.
We're terrible. I don't think it was necessarily a race thing at that point.
No, it wasn't, because the whole race thing comes later, because he's totally surprised to find out about Isaiah Bradley.
Yeah, which we'll get to Isaiah in a minute. I think it was something along the lines of he didn't want to be he felt Steve was Captain America. He saw Steve as the Captain America, and that there could never be another person like Steve.
And he didn't feel comfortable taking up that responsibility, that mantle.
Yeah, he didn't want to, like, overwrite Steve's legacy or, like, mess up Steve's legacy or anything. So he gave up the shield, and then we find out by the end of episode 1 that the shield has been handed off to someone else, and that someone else is... I forgot his first name, but his last name's Walker.
It's John Walker. It's an American as apple pie name.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Walker. Mm-hmm. Or his alias in the comics, U.S. Agent. Which
he becomes by the end of the series.
Mm-hmm. Funny aside.
Yeah.
You see John Walker at the very end of the first episode. He doesn't even say anything. Just, the government's like, welcome, your new Captain America. And he walks out, smiles, roll credits.
Just a little wink.
Yeah, and I just knew because of the nature of the internet. As soon as he walked out, I'm like, oh, people are gonna really freaking hate this.
They immediately
They're gonna hate this. They're gonna hate this man, and they did.
I hadn't even been watching the show yet, and I immediately remember seeing all these memes pop up of like, look at this discount brand ass motherfucker taking over Captain America. What is this bullshit? Like, everybody was pissed. It's like, I think episode 1 just aired. How is he already this bad?
It's as soon as, like, literally 2 minutes after it ended, my work buddy texts me, and he says, and I quote, "Who the hell is this cheese dick?"
Oh boy!
It kind of speaks to the power of how these characters have just really touched people over the decade that the MCU has started. Yeah. Because like people don't just hate John Walker, because they think he's a bad character. They hate him on a visceral level because how dare somebody wear that costume and hold that shield?
Yeah. But by the way, quick aside, if you're one of those people who like harass the actual actor for playing this role, you're a fucking asshole.
Yes, you guys don't know how to fiction properly.
It's fiction. It's a story. He's a paid actor. He acts. He's not a real monster.
Yeah, thankfully he wasn't on Instagram. It was a fan account, which doesn't make it any better, of course, but the fan account for the actor Wyatt Russell got bombarded with all kinds of you know how the internet is.
People
terrible
are
comments, death threats, of course.
People are
of course.
You sicken me. You people sicken me. My listening audience, you sicken me.
But John Walker is a very interesting character.
I'm going to confess something here. I never hated Walker. I
never hated him either.
I went into this show after seeing, because I went in late and I was expecting to hate him because everybody else hated him. I never hate him. Like, there's never a point where I'm like, oh, this guy's a fucking asshole. Like, he needs to die in a ditch or something. It's like, I absolutely understand Walker's character arc. And it's tragic as hell.
Mm-hmm. He's not a bad guy. He's just...
Well, let's talk about his history a little bit. So Walker was chosen because he's got like 3 medals of honor or something for his time spent in Afghanistan, and we don't get the specific details of what happened. But Walker keeps alluding to how like what I had to do to get those medals, I shouldn't have gotten a medal for it. Like you can tell that really messed him up his time in Afghanistan, and like the whole series, he's a stand-in for like the way that this country treats veterans with like their hero worship, but at the same time completely ignoring the effects of war and how they've like completely messed with their heads and like ruined their lives through war. Like it's sad to see the way that Walker reacts to stuff, because like he's like enjoying being Captain America for a while. He's like, oh man, all these people are praising me, and I want to do my job, and I want to do my best to like uphold the legacy of Captain America and be like the best Captain America I can be. And like everybody loves him except for Sam and Bucky, who are like they're like, you're not him, you haven't earned it, you haven't earned the legacy. Kind of for no reason at first, to be honest. They're kind of dicks to him out the gate, even though they don't even know the guy. And
they had the same bias as the audience.
They have the exact same bias as the audience, and I wish the show kind of called them out on it, because like...
Well, to be fair to Sam, he did not know or think or expect the government, because he gave the shield to the government to put on display in a museum. Yeah. He did not think that they were going to take it and create a new Captain America with it.
Yeah, and to be fair to Bucky, he's been brainwashed for 60 years, and he's shit.
I definitely understand Sam being pissed.
Yeah.
For sure.
But, like, he's trying his best throughout this whole time, but you can just see the way that, like, his time at war has warped his view of the world. Like, he sees everything as, like, we have to neutralize this threat, we can't negotiate, we have to take them down before they can hurt any more people, even if it means, like, killing people who may not necessarily be evil. We have to, like, he's not evil, he's just broken.
No, he's not evil at all. He's even, I would argue, genuinely trying his best for, like, the first half of the series.
Absolutely.
He's trying to, work with Sam and Bucky. He's he doesn't seem to let the mantle get to his head to a degree where he just becomes an egomaniac.
Yeah, he actually complains a bit early on, like, I really wish I could just go do my job instead of having to tour around and do all this stuff, you know? I wish I could go out there and help people.
He seems genuinely honored and humbled by the fact that they chose him. And they chose him not just for his crazy decorations. He's also just perfect physical specimen.
Yeah, but he's not a super soldier, though. Like,
he's just a really good physical.
Yeah, he's a great
dude.
A great soldier, and that's kind of his whole arc is exploring, you know, what does it mean to be a good soldier, and is that a good thing? Does being a good soldier make you a good person? Does it, like, what impact does that have on you to be a good soldier? And it's a tragic arc, to be honest. You see him just slowly break down under the pressure of trying to be the best Captain America he can and failing consistently because, like, he can't find the bad guys, and when he does find them, he gets his butt kicked by some people, and he's like, if I was a super soldier, I'd be able to do this, and this gets ahead a little bit, but he finally gets a hold of the super soldier serum and takes it, and, like, even then, it's like, he says he's doing what he has to because it's what the government wants him to be, and he's not entirely wrong, even though he wasn't, like, commanded to take the super soldier serum illegally. It's like, they told him to be the best he could be, and this is what he saw as the only way to do that, and it's tragic as hell.
Yeah, because if you're not completely biased by the fact that, oh my god, how could they make this guy Captain America, and you hate him automatically just because you're projecting your feelings onto him. I mean, of course he makes mistakes. That's the whole point. He makes massive mistakes. He lets the mantle get to him because of the fact that he's also on the trail of the Flag Smashers. He's not making much headway with them. He's not getting cooperation from Sam and Bucky. He makes the mistake of thinking that because he's got that shield, it speaks for itself, that people are going to respect the authority that comes with it.
Yeah.
And they don't. And that you can see that eating away at him, like come on, like, I'm Captain America, like,
I can do anything.
Work with me here, like, right. Why are people putting up walls? Like, I'm just doing my job.
Which ties in perfectly to the whole, like, U.S. imperialism theme moving throughout the show of, like, oh, we're the U.S. military, why aren't these people cooperating with us? We're the good guys, you know? That's his arc. He is the stand-in for the U.S. military of being like, we're the good guys, we do the good thing, why aren't you cooperating? I will force you to cooperate with me. He's a very interesting character.
You first see him really kind of slip when he gets frustrated because he's chasing the main leader of the Flag Smashers, who we'll get to at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And goes to their hideout. She's not there, and he's getting resistance from the people protecting her. Like, we're never going to give him up. And he gets spit on and takes that a little personally. Slams the person against the column or whatever, and, like, screams in their face, like, "Do you know who I am?" That's the first major. The pressure's getting to him. He needs to take a step back. This is going to get worse. And should we just jump ahead to the big oh no?
Yeah, let's jump ahead to the big oh no. So he has a partner. I've already forgotten his partner's name. What was his code name?
His code name is Battlestar.
Battlestar. His partner Battlestar is kind of like the strategist for them. Like, he kind of, like, does all the tech work and basically is kind of his manager almost too.
And partner in the field.
And partner in the field, yeah. The two of them meet up with Sam and Bucky and Baron Zemo, who we also need to talk about, but we'll get to him.
Oh god, there's so much.
There's so many characters to deal with in this series. But they meet up with them. They say, all right, you've got like 5 minutes to talk to this Flag Smasher leader, Carly, before we come in and we arrest her. And Sam goes in, tries to talk her down, because, like, he's seen a bunch of stuff that he sympathized with her, and Sam goes and tries to talk to her, but then, like, Walker goes in, tries to arrest her, they get away, they find them again, and his partner gets killed. Walker, who has taken the super soldier serum at this point, goes into basically a blind rage, chases down one of the Flag Smashers, and kills him in the street with the shield.
Yep.
And probably the most brutal death in the MCU.
Yeah,
so
I was surprised at how hardcore the show got at some point.
They don't show the direct, like, final wound on the guy, but he's just banging the shield into his chest over and over, and you see like his spasming legs as blood splatters up onto Walker's face, and then it cuts to this last shot of Walker standing there with a crowd of people like filming him, with him blood spattered and blood all over the shield. And it is
what a prime loaded image that is of blood on Captain America's shield. Like, it's this is what it's like in the hands of somebody who's not Steve. This is what it can come to symbolize if it's not held responsibly.
Mm-hmm. So that was his breaking point. That's the moment where he loses it.
The kicker is, though, you could argue that he was justified in killing the Flag Smasher. Not to like get into the morals of like when can you take a life, but
that's perhaps go ahead though.
U.S. operative. He's tasked with hunting down terrorists because the Flag Smashers are terrorists. His partner is killed, so you can argue it's justified that that it's okay to also take that person's life because of crime of passion, heat of the moment, the job, but he gets the Captain America mantle taken away by a committee. But it's not because he, killed somebody in cold blood. It's just because of PR.
It's a PR nightmare. And this is perhaps something we should talk about just in general with these characters, not even just this show, but these characters are military or military-adjacent agents. Like, they don't have, like, a no-kill rule like Batman or Spider-Man or stuff. And it kind of makes it a little more morally gray when talking about killing. Because, like you said, you can totally make a case that, like, Walker's killing is no more, like, morally egregious than any of the killing that Sam or Bucky do in this series. The series opens with Sam blowing up, like, 3 helicopters trying to get this one guy back from, like, this group of terrorists who are kidnapping him. And it's like they don't save...
Yeah, how many people die in that opening action scene? Like a dozen?
It's like 3 helicopters full of people, and like...
He's kicking people out of helicopters hundreds of feet in the air.
Yeah, blowing them up.
They're dead. They're dying.
Like, Sam and Bucky kill a lot of people in this show, and like, the fact that Walker kills one... Granted, he kills him while he's begging for his life, but like... It's not necessary. You can make a solid argument that Walker's killing isn't any more egregious than theirs. It's the fact that he did so as Captain America in public with a bunch of people recording him in a brutal way that gets the mantle taken away from him. Which just goes to show, there's like his court scene is great because he ends up yelling at them, "I am what you made me," and that's absolutely true. Like, he did what the government told him to. They told him to be Captain America, and that is what American militarization does. Like, it's brutal.
Yeah, and that comes full circle back to what you were saying about how he's a huge commentary on the relationship between the American military
as a world police,
the public, and how we treat our veterans.
Yeah.
John Walker's nothing but a hero. We all love him. But until he makes us look bad, then we throw him on the trash fire and tell him to get the fuck out.
Even though he was following orders.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in charge don't get any blame for it. Which is, like, there's a lot of commentary around Walker. And he is probably not my favorite, but the one I'm most interested in this series.
Yeah, it's probably the most nuanced character of the series.
Yeah. We should backtrack... To some other characters, because we've skipped a few.
Yeah. Should we talk about Carly or Isaiah first?
Let's do Isaiah first, because Isaiah's an interesting character too. So during one part, a little sidetrack. This series has a lot of standing around talking. It's a little more slow paced than I expect. Like, there are action scenes, and there's some high budget action scenes with some really good CGI. I like the opening. Like I said, helicopter fight with Sam in the beginning and also the finale. But a lot of it is them just kind of talking to each other, trying to figure things out, also discussing like all the themes and issues going on. At one point, Bucky reveals that there was another super soldier besides Steve, that there was actually a whole group of super soldiers, and one of them has survived, and it's a black man who served in, was it Vietnam? No, it's Korea in the 50s. This whole super soldier, we find out that he was experimented on along with a bunch of other black men, basically a stand-in for the Tuskegee study of like the U.S. government when they were like experimenting on black people giving them syphilis and stuff. Like, it's like all this horrific, terrible stuff that the government did to people in real life. The MCU takes it and makes it into like them experimenting with the super soldier serum, and like everyone else except this one guy, Isaiah, dies, and Isaiah then gets thrown into prison for like 30 years and experimented on to figure out like why he was a successful candidate for the super soldier serum. He escaped, and he's been in hiding. Everybody thinks he's dead. Nobody in like the public knows that he exists, that there was ever a black super soldier. He basically tells Sam to his face, like, you can't be Captain America and call yourself an upstanding black man because of the history of this nation and what continues to go on. Like, you can't, because our people have been horrendously abused by this nation since its very beginning.
Yeah, it's pretty loaded. It's insanely loaded. It's hard to listen to in a good way, and it's hard to see in a good way because it's so analogous to real life. And he flat out says to Sam, like, no self-respecting black man would want to be Captain America. And that throws Sam through a loop, of course. And
like the next scene too, like a couple of police officers come up to Sam and Bucky while they're arguing in the street, and even though Bucky was the one yelling, they're like telling Sam to calm down. That just reinforces it even harder. I feel so bad for Isaiah. He's a great moral sticking point for Sam in his journey. And I'm glad they put it in, but it is so hard to listen to his story because I know, like, it's based on real world history. Like I said, it's basically the Tuskegee study. It's just a full stand-in for that.
And I would say I don't think this is an active detriment to the show, but I definitely think it could have used more screen time for Isaiah. Mm-hmm. If they had the time or the budget. Of course, they have the budget. It's Disney.
Yeah.
But it would have been, I think, pretty powerful to have some flashbacks of Isaiah when he was younger. Kind of seeing what he went through.
Yeah.
To connect to his character more.
Yeah. Because he's a hero too. I didn't bring this up, but like he saved a whole like platoon of soldiers by himself, and he gets thrown in prison for it.
Yep, and they stole all his mail from his wife. He never got to correspond with his family. They died. Everybody he loved died before he was able to, get back to him. So he's just been living essentially in poverty as a fugitive his whole life.
Yeah.
After he escaped, and it's just like, whew.
It's heartbreaking. It's real heartbreaking, and it's a great addition to this series because it absolutely throws Sam for a loop when he's like, what does it mean to be Captain America? Does it mean that I'm a race traitor to become Captain America? Like, it's a good question that they bring up. By the end of the series, Sam does take on the mantle of Captain America, and he comes to Isaiah at the end and shows him that he's going to be a different kind of Captain America. He's going to be a Captain America that calls people out for the terrible things that happen in America, that like all the horrible things America has done. And he also shows him that he has had a wing of the Captain America memorial dedicated to Isaiah. He like brought his story to light without telling people that Isaiah's still alive, and they've like added a whole wing for him. And I've got kind of mixed feelings about that ending for Isaiah, because Isaiah like hugs him. It's like kind of like Isaiah has a change of heart. He's like, I think you made the right choice, Sam. I don't know. I kind of wanted Isaiah to still be like, you're in the wrong. You made the wrong choice, to like leave that sort of ambiguity. Like, did Sam make the right choice? Because, like I said earlier, you can make a strong argument that he didn't. And having Sam have to accept his decision even when this other figure who is so important to the history of the super soldier serum and to the history of black people in America just tell him, like, no, you're wrong. I think that would have been a really powerful thing for Sam to be like, I'm going to have to accept that, like, he's never going to say I did the right thing. I'm just going to have to choose to believe I'm right. But the way they did it, they gave it more of a happy ending, more of a hopeful ending where it's like, maybe there is a way forward. Maybe there is a way to make up for the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, let me collect my thoughts here, because I totally get that point, and I wouldn't be against that ending. I think that would have been just as, maybe even more powerful to end it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like about the ending is that Sam gives this on the streets. He gives this impassioned sort of monologue to the members of the GRC. He just kind of lays into them and kind of gives this great, superhero speech. You can kind of look at it as maybe being on the nose or a little hokey, but how I see it is that, like, this is why superheroes matter. This is why people love them so much, is because even if they're tackling real world issues and talking about real problems and stuff, it's a fictional world where the presence of hope and a better tomorrow is tangible.
It's supposed to inspire hope.
Yes, it's possible. Yeah. That's why they matter.
I know that we're kind of jumping around a bit in this one, but do you want to talk about Sam's speech now?
Yeah, I pulled it up so I can kind of read it verbatim so we can do it justice.
Okay. Do you want to read the whole thing?
Yeah, I'll read the whole thing. Why not?
Yeah, go for it.
After, him and Bucky and John Walker, he kind of has a bit of a redemption arc. Beat the bad guys in the finale. Sam, full Captain America garb. He looks great in his Captain America suit, by the way.
Love the suit. It's great.
The senators are there. They're kind of giving him guff. And, like, they do the thing. They call them terrorists. They're talking about resetting the borders and stuff like that. And Sam's like, you got to stop calling them terrorists. And one of the senators is like, well, what are you talking about? This is his first kind of big chunk of the monologue. Your peacekeeping troops carrying weapons are forcing millions of people into settlements around the world, right? What do you think those people are going to call you? These labels, terrorists, refugees, thug, they're often used to get around the question why. And then one of the senators is like, those settlements that happened 5 years ago, do you think it is fair for government to have to support that? Sam's like, yes. And then another senator says, and the people who reappeared only to find someone else living in their family home, they just end up homeless? I get it, but you have no idea how complicated the situation is. And this is when Sam goes in hard. He's like, you know what? You're right, and that's a good thing. We finally have a common struggle now. Think about it. For once, all the people who have been begging, and I mean literally begging for you to feel how hard any given day is, now you know. How did it feel to be helpless? If you can remember what it was like to be helpless and face a force so powerful it could erase half the planet, you wouldn't know that you were about to have the exact same impact. This isn't about easy decisions, Senator. I'm a black man carrying the stars and stripes. What don't I understand? Every time I pick this thing up, I know there are millions of people out there who are going to hate me for it. Even now, here, I feel it. The stares, the judgment, and there's nothing I can do to change it. And I'm still here. No super serum. No blonde hair or blue eyes. The only power I have is that I believe we can do better. We can't demand that people step up if we don't meet them halfway. You control the banks. Shit, you can move borders. You can knock down a force with an email. You could feed 1 million people with a phone call. But the question is, who is in the room with you when you're making those decisions? Is it the people you're going to impact, or is it more people like you? And then there's a bit more where they talk about Carly, who's the villain, who we still haven't talked about yet.
We'll get to her.
So, I mean, that's...
Chills, by the way. It's like Anthony Mackie was in the room with me. Why didn't they cast you as Sam Wilson, Tyler? Why didn't they cast you, a white man, as Sam Wilson?
Let's not go there.
Okay.
But, I love that monologue. I think it's awesome. It's it's a lot more like blunt and in your face than I would have thought a Disney production would go with something like this. Because one of my biggest issues with Civil War is that they kind of dance around some of the bigger issues that the movie presents, and they kind of get away from them. But I don't think they do that here with the show. I think they go into them a lot more.
They definitely hit them hard. I mostly agree with you in that this speech is fantastic, but there is a criticism, and I've seen a few other people have this online. I kind of wish that it ended with something a little more solid than Sam telling the senators to just be better. Because that's sort of like, we have to demand more, be better, kind of, narrative that we get usually from like progressive groups is kind of also the criticism that a lot of people have of progressive groups. And it's like, okay, but like, what do we do specifically? It's not advocating like a specific policy to be better. It's just saying you're not doing good enough. And I kind of wish that Sam had offered, or even the show had offered, like a more solid answer to this problem. Even though I know it's a complicated issue, and the point is that it's complicated and we have to deal with it. I wish we got to see... I needed something a little more like, how do we move forward? Because demanding people to be better is great. Demanding the people in power to empathize with the common people is great. I love that. But like, if we don't offer a solid way forward, then we don't like get actual change. Like, it's not like it to compare to like real world issues. It's not like healthcare for all, where it's like, okay, here is a specific policy we want to enact, and here's how it will improve the lives of everyone, and then people are just ignoring that. It's more like the show just kind of says, oh, you have to be better. And it's like, what does that look like? What do we do with that?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I can agree with that.
And don't get me wrong, I love like the first 2/3 of the speech. Like him calling out the senators on all their bullshit, pointing out how like labels are used to justify violence, and how basically the U.S. military acts as terrorists in forest countries, or the GPR or the GRC or whoever. Like that, all of that's great, but I just wish it had ended on a more solid note than just be better.
Yeah, it would have been cool if there were some hints or just actual dialogue of like what exactly being better entails.
Yeah.
But I will add that I think, it happening on the streets in front of a bunch of cameras kind of gives it more context and nuance. Like, oh shit, we were called out by Captain America.
Yeah.
In front of the world. Like, if anything, that would like cynically make them be like all eyes are on us, maybe we got to start doing shit now.
Right. And I don't even necessarily mean that I wanted Sam himself to say it. I wish the show had maybe taken a little more time at the end to show like what was the way forward, what was the ethical decision there.
Well, maybe you can argue that endorsing Sam Wilson as Captain America is one of those steps.
I meant more specifically about the issue of like,
I know, the wider issue of
the Global Repatriation Act and all that. Yeah, like I said, I love that speech too. I love most of it, but I just wish it had had a little more solid of a landing there. We should definitely talk about Carly now, and I feel like there's kind of a reason we've not talked about her yet. It might be because she kind of jumps around a bit. She's a little inconsistent, I think.
I don't know if I'd call her inconsistent, just a lot of people flat out don't like her, I've noticed. I don't think she's as bad as some people make her out to be.
No.
I think she's interesting enough. I think she's sympathetic, but there's just not enough of her.
Well, let's talk about her motive real quick. So she and this group, the Flag Smashers, they're wanting to break down all the borders. They're wanting to keep the people who were, like, during the blip, made like lives for themselves, who are getting moved out of, they're being forcibly like removed from their homes. She's wanting to keep them how they are. We find out that she was in a refugee camp, and she made a life for herself and then got kicked out and made into a radical because of that. And you can really sympathize with her cause and everything, except that she's also extremely violent. Like, not even just like the way that everybody else is, like, oh, I'm going to fight the people who are fighting against me. She blows up a building at one point with, like, people inside who were handing out supplies to, like, granted, they were handing out supplies, they were, like, keeping supplies from refugees and giving it to people who had been, just come back from the blip, but they were also, like, volunteer workers who were, like, helping to relocate people and stuff, and she blows up the building and kills 3 of them and injures 11, and she's like, this is the only language they'll understand, and it's like, Jesus Christ, lady, like, I was supposed to sympathize with you, and you just brutally murdered a bunch of civilians.
Well, that's why she's the villain.
Yeah, but, like, the show kind of also pushes really, really, really hard for you to sympathize with her, but also not, but also yes, and it's like, pick a it's one thing to have a nuanced villain, but you've got to kind of pick a platform, like, is she a radical monster that will kill anyone that disagrees with her, or is she, like, a revolutionary who's trying to change the world, but through bad methods? And the show is like both.
Yeah, it doesn't quite stick the landing as far as that dichotomy goes. I will say, for me, how I interpret it is, I don't sympathize with her as a person herself. I sympathize with her cause, just the way that Sam does, because Sam flat out says, like, your ideology, like what you want, I'm all for, but you're going about it the completely wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it. Like, she's a mass murderer, she's a terrorist, she's killing people, but her actual goal is one that I also agree with. It's kind of the world that I would want, that a lot of younger progressive people want. I like that she's young and idealistic and naive, but I also think that works against her, and it makes her come off a bit too bratty.
It kind of makes you wonder how she became the leader of this group. There are other people in this group, and they're all pretty young looking, but she kind of looks to be like one of the youngest, and it's like, how did she get in charge? Like,
yeah, it's kind of weird how they all skew young.
She's not even particularly, like, outspoken either. Like, she kind of talks softly a lot, and she doesn't really say anything that's, like, super charismatic. She's just, like, kind of the de facto leader because.
I mean, I kind of like how she's unassuming, like, physically. She's a young girl. But what makes her dangerous is that she's willing to go that extra mile every time, like, no matter what. It is kind of weird how, like, all the flag smashers that we see skew young, because it seems like they're kind of making a point of, like, the mindset of young revolutionaries. It's just they're too easy to get radicalized, or they're too, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but it just kind of seems like it's talking down to young people with radical notions for change. Not radical in the sense of dangerous, but just like, oh, young people and their, their silly notions,
their
for
desire to live, their desire to continue living happily and peacefully. Don't they remember that banks exist? The banks are back. You've been gone for 5 years. You can't get a loan.
And I also don't know how I feel about her dying, because on a narrative thematic level, your villain, no matter how noble their cause may be, if they're mad with power and killing people, like, narratively, they have to be punished. That's just kind of one of the rules of fiction,
Yeah.
But I hate talking in missed opportunities, because I don't think, when you criticize something for, oh, this is a missed opportunity, I don't think that means anything.
Well, when you're talking about it in the themes that the show is presenting, I think you have something to contribute there.
They go out of their way to make it ambiguous with Zemo the whole time, and maybe sort of, what's he doing? Like, could he be, is he kind of redemptive? Is he not? Like, maybe they could have had a thing where, like, Carly gets injured and arrested, and, like, maybe, like, Sam and Bucky help kind of de-radicalize her over time, and she, maybe from prison, kind of helps implement policy,
Yeah.
To help with, the repatriation.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like a slow road to redemption. Not getting her off the hook. She'd still be, like, imprisoned and stuff, but...
Right. Well, she does partly so that Sam can have that speech at the end too, because he points out, like, this girl died trying to stop you. Why do you think that is? And I think it wouldn't have had the same impact as she, just was trying to stop you so hard. Why do you think that is? Like, the tragedy of her death is that even though she's labeled a terrorist and everything, her end goal itself was not necessarily wrong.
Overall, if I had to grade Carly Morgan,
you're gonna grade a character.
I'm gonna grade it. I know, but
oh my god,
I will be a hypocrite in this capacity because of the whole, Marvel has not good villains a lot of the time thing.
Yeah,
I think she's not like top tier MCU villain, but I think she's better than many.
Oh, yeah, she's a B tier. I'd put her in B.
If they just tweaked a little bit more, I think she could have stood out.
Yeah.
Even more.
Yeah. Let's talk about Zemo. We haven't talked about Zemo yet.
Oh, fucking Zemo.
Zemo's a scene stealer. Where was this Zemo in Civil War? He was He was so fun.
It's just not to beat the dead horse of I don't like Civil War, one of the most popular MCU movies, but Zemo is another one of the things I have an issue with in that movie is that he's basically just a cipher for the plot. He's just plot catalyst. That's all he is in that movie.
Yeah.
There's nothing to him.
Well, you get to see his ideology. This show does a lot of like retroactive character development. I think we get to see a lot more of like why he did what he did in Civil War, and it's not just like the tragedy of losing my family. It's like his whole ideology is like, superheroes are just another form of supremacists who try to enforce their will on the world around them.
Yeah, he's kind of like a lot of the time in the comics, Cap villains like Red Skull and Zemo and Zola, they're Nazi analogs. Ideologically, they're not technically Nazis because most of the time Red Skull doesn't care for Nazi ideology. He just uses them for his own purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But Zemo's ideology of like no superheroes, no superpowers, like it's kind of like this weird inverse of supremacy. It's like
he's anti-supremacist.
He's anti-supremacist, but at the same time, his staunch anti-supremacy is supremacy of its own right because he doesn't want to give anybody like that the benefit of the doubt.
Oh yeah, and he enforces his ideology on everybody else too. But you absolutely understand where he's coming from, and he makes a lot of good points because he's like, the Avengers can get away with whatever they want, and it's like, yeah, they kind of can. There's even a point in the show where Sam points out to Walker like, you're all tied up in like the red tape of the military and everything. You just slow us down, and it's like, why do you all have unlimited jurisdiction to do whatever you want in the world? Like, that's kind of a problem. Yeah,
and it's really cool that they chose Zemo to kind of carry that forward, because if there's one character that needed it in the MCU, it was Zemo, because he had so much potential.
Yeah.
And they gave some to him.
Real quick, plot wise, they break Zemo out because they need to find a Hydra agent to find the super soldiers, or whoever's making the super soldier serum. That's why Zemo's in the plot.
And there's a lot of fun suspense with Zemo because you're waiting for the shoe to drop. You're waiting for him to flat out turn heel on Sam and Bucky, and he never quite 100% does.
No.
Which is very intriguing because it's a trope you expect,
He gets away at one point. He like runs away from them, but he never tries to stop them from doing what they're doing or anything. He's just like,
he wants them to succeed, basically.
Yeah.
They're hunting down super soldiers, and he hates super soldiers. And he's got a fun scene with Bucky where he's like, "It's okay. I've decided I'm not going to kill you." And Bucky's like, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I wanted more of his Zemo mask, though. I don't know what the point of him just having it in one scene and not using it ever again is.
Trailer fodder. It sucks because it was a cool mask. MCU does a great job of like adapting the superhero comic costumes into real costumes, like live action.
For the most part, I agree.
For the most part.
I have some nitpicks with some characters.
Yeah.
Like Thor's helmet. Did I already bitch about Thor's helmet on the podcast?
We've talked about Thor Ragnarok like 50 times. One of these days, people, we will bitch about that movie in its entirety.
And I just want Hawkeye to have his goddamn mask. His goofy ass mask. Like, come on.
Give us the goof mask.
But so far, these MCU shows have killed it with the costume design.
Yeah.
Scarlet Witch's full-on Scarlet Witch costume at the end of WandaVision was cream of the crop.
Sam's Captain America outfit's beautiful.
It's top-tier MCU suit, in my opinion. It's awesome.
Yeah. I heard some people said they didn't like it. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, it takes all of the good elements of the Captain America suit and combines it with Sam's Falcon outfit, and it's great. Like, it's amazing.
So cool. I want it. It's sexy. Like, come on, people.
It's like, hell yeah, this is the new Captain America. I'm all on board with that. But yeah, Zemo's great. He's a fun character. I love that his dancing has already become a meme. He does like a little dance in like a bar scene at one point.
Like I told you off podcast. I'm like, as soon as I saw that scene, I'm like, that's going to be a meme.
Yeah.
And lo and behold,
it
is.
There's a few scenes. I also like the... he has another meme that's his, where he says something about some album, I think. He's like, it really captures the African-American experience, and Sam's like, he's out of line, but he's right.
Yeah, the Trouble Man album, which is the album that Sam tells Steve to listen to.
Or Bucky.
To help him get adjusted to...
Or no, he tells Steve and Bucky. He tells both.
Yeah, he tells Steve in Winter Soldier and tells Bucky in the show.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's also I feel like there's another element we're not talking about.
Oh.
Sharon.
Yeah, it's Sharon. Okay, let's talk about Sharon.
I take it back. Carly isn't the character they dropped the ball with the most.
Yeah.
Sharon they dropped the ball with the most.
So, if you all even remember Sharon Carter, she was in the Winter Soldier as the agent who had to spy on Steve. She's like the great niece of Peggy Carter, Steve's girlfriend from World War II times. In Winter Soldier, she just kind of helps a little, and then there's one scene in Civil War where she kisses Steve out of nowhere. Like, they were trying to make a romance happen.
Isn't at all.
It's very weird, because A, that's the great niece of your ex-girlfriend, and also you've shared, like, 3 scenes collectively, so, like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, it's also creepy in the comics, because she's the main love interest for Steve in the comics.
Yeah, if something's creepy in the comics, you fix it. You don't keep it creepy. That's the whole point of an adaptation, is to make it better. But in this... she's had, even though we didn't really know much about her character before, she's had like a complete 180.
Complete 180.
So there's talk about this power broker this whole time, who's in like this shady city, Madripoor, who like controls everything from the shadows, and it's so obvious. It's so obvious that it's Sharon Carter from like the very beginning, because it's like, oh man, she's controlling everything from the shadows. Wait a minute. Oh yeah. So,
I honestly didn't see it coming. I don't know why.
You didn't see it coming because it makes no damn sense for her to be a villain now. She just is.
I mean, she explains her motivations for doing what she's doing, not as power broker, but just kind of like pulling strings, because how she got fucked over.
Yeah.
Because of Civil War, but like it's too much of a hand play. You know, it's too much of a heel turn. She's flat out villainous.
Yeah.
Like,
she's the one who kills Carly. She shoots Carly to death, which granted you can say she did it to like save Sam Wilson's life because Carly was about to kill him. But like, she also plants like a spy to watch Carly and Sam, and like she's manipulating both of them throughout this whole thing. And like, she was the one who created the super soldier serum, or who paid to have it created, and like, which made a whole lot of chaos for a lot of people. And it's just like, she's completely gone villainous. Like, any hero that used to exist in her, if at all, is gone.
Yeah, it just seems like a odd decision. Like, I understand like the desire to want to expand characters that might have not gotten the justice in the movies, but they kind of just overplay their hand with Sharon. The power broker could have been anybody,
Yeah.
It could have been a new character. It could have been. They could have made it Zola from Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
The computer guy with
Yeah.
the computer in his face and the robot body. They could have made it him, or it just could have been the power broker from the comics, who's just a guy. He's just a guy who becomes this shadowy string puller. Needing to tie it in with Sharon just feels like a needlessly convoluted plot element.
It's just there to show that she's a bad guy now and to set up a possible spin-off with her manipulating the government.
Yeah, they announced Captain America 4, which is gonna star Samus Cap. Cool, awesome, can't wait. So I think it's quite obvious that she's probably gonna be in it. She might be the main villain or one of the villains. Maybe she's a Skrull. We know they're making a Secret Invasion show. She could be a Skrull.
We can't just start doing the apologetics though of like every blab plot point is a Skrull. If we go down that road,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that in an apologetics way. I'm just saying maybe she's a Skrull. Maybe that will explain her really dark turn for no reason.
I don't like that Vision, once he got his memories back, just left Wanda. Maybe it was a Skrull Vision.
Like it wouldn't feel so jarring if we got hints of that kind of personality under the surface before. Like
there's none. Like we get that like she's kind of manipulative because she's a spy earlier, but we never get like that she's a full-on villain. Like she's always been kind of like a Black Widow lot, somebody who's willing to kind of stretch the rules of morality to do what she believes is right. And now it's like, no, she's just doing whatever the hell she wants.
Yeah, it's weird. Didn't need to happen the way it happens. Probably my biggest flaw with the show.
Yeah.
Overall, the show threatens to become too overstuffed, but it never quite becomes too overstuffed, which is it just teeters on maybe not hitting all the points that it needs to hit, but
it's got some pacing problems too. Like I said, a lot of it is dialogue, and a lot of the dialogue is great. It hits on some heavy themes, it's entertaining, but it's also a lot, And I'll also say that while some of the action scenes are really good, like even on par with like high budget movies in the MCU, like the helicopter chases and stuff that Sam does every time he's in the suit, that's great. A lot of the fight scenes where it's just like them kind of punching each other that are like more grounded are not that great. It's kind of just shaky. It's just kind of shaky cam. Like, you can't really tell what's going on because they're kind of just jumping around and punching each other, and it's really not that entertaining when they're doing that. So honestly, even though the dialogue scenes are a little slower, I'd say they're better than most of the action scenes.
Yeah, I'll agree with the hand-to-hand combat stuff. I don't know they just can't get it completely right. Like, the hand-to-hand fighting in Winter Soldier is pretty good. It's probably the best sort of non-CGI-aided action in the MCU. But, like, I'm kind of an action junkie, so, like, I don't want to get too technical about, like, filmmaking techniques.
Go for it. Do it!
Combat. But, Winter Soldier does it the best, but it's still not great. A lot of fans think it's great, and you're allowed to. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but it's still not quite up to par the way it could be. But Civil War with the hand-to-hand combat stuff completely drops the ball. The editing is too herky-jerky. You can tell that they're cutting around actors who aren't trained to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
when you compare it to big level CGI things like, you see in the Hulk smash through a building and Thor shooting down lightning and stuff, and then you suddenly cut to like Captain America kicking a guy, it's like, you've got to be able to film that in a way that makes it actually entertaining,
Yeah. And I would have thought because it's a TV show, and because of the Netflix shows, with Daredevil has incredible fight scenes.
Daredevil's amazing.
Incredible fight scenes. And I thought, like, maybe, with Falcon and Winter Soldier, they'll get it right. It'll get kind of Daredevil-esque, but it's the same kind of technique as Civil War.
This show is very much closer to being like a long MCU movie than WandaVision was. WandaVision took a lot more chances in like the way it was directed and the way that the plot played out, that like kind of stepped away from the traditional Marvel film. This one feels like a sequel to The Winter Soldier in a way.
And Civil War, yeah. It's a 6-hour sequel to Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame, basically. I do like the part. I did like the part with the Sam, Bucky, John Walker fight where they break his fucking arm to get the shield off. That was brutal as shit. I'm like, oh
yeah. Sam and Bucky just beat the shit out of Walker in like a factory after he kills that guy. They just beat the shit out of him to get the shield back, and it's a brutal fight.
Which is I appreciated the kind of physicality that they brought to some of the action, and even though the combat itself wasn't shot the best, there was an attempt to ground it in more realistic violence, which they haven't quite done to that extent in the MCU.
They do some clever stuff with Falcon's wings too. Like he'll use his wings, like shunt them into the ground to like give him more of a power stance, which is like what he needs against some of these super soldiers and stuff. He'll use it to like shield himself against bullets. Like when they're making use of like the actual abilities and stuff that aren't just hand-to-hand combat, there's some really interesting things they do with the action sequences.
I'll grade the action.
Oh shit!
I'll give
guys. Somebody broke Tyler. He likes numbers now.
Only this time. Only this time.
Oh,
I'll give the overall action, because the more CGI heavy effect sequences are pretty great, a B-.
B-.
A B-. I think we kind of pretty much talked it all out.
Yeah. We're definitely getting a Young Avengers, by the way. Isaiah's grandson is Patriot.
Oh my god, duh!
Did you not catch that?
I don't know why. I knew that, but for some reason I just didn't connect it for some stupid reason. I don't know why. Yeah, we're definitely getting Young Avengers. Yeah,
Young Avengers is absolutely happening. That's I don't know why I haven't already announced it.
Well, since we have, cause I think he's called Patriot, right? He's called
Patriot. Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah. So we've had Patriot introduced. We've had the two siblings of Wanda introduced.
Wiccan and Speedy Gonzalez.
Wiccan and Speedy.
There's too many Speed characters.
Kate Bishop, Hawk. I don't think she was originally part of the team, but they're probably going to make her in
Hawkeye.
Yeah. And then with the Secret Invasion show coming in like a year or two, that's probably how they're going to introduce Hulking.
Hulkling! Little Hulkling.
Hulking.
Is it Hulking? I thought it was Hulkling, like a baby Hulk. I'm going to look you up on that.
Yeah, look me up on that. So check me before the internet checks me.
Theodore Altman, Earth 616 from the Marvel database.
I only read the series once, and it was like a decade ago, so my nerd cred still stands.
Where is
it? Is Hulkling? Yeah.
Because it's like a baby Hulk is his.
Why did I think it was Hulking?
I don't know. Because the whole deal is that they're
10 lashes. 10 lashes for me for getting that.
10 lashes for Tyler for being wrong on a nerd thing. I need to look into Hulkling more. He's a cool looking character that I don't know much about aside from that he's dating Wiccan, or he's married to Wiccan.
And they're also doing Ironheart, so she's gonna be on the. Oh yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. They're gonna lead up to Young Avengers in the next decade.
Yeah.
If not the next 5 years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe next phase. Maybe they're gonna be a big thing in the next phase. Have a whole movie.
Which, hey, I'm down for. That'd be cool. That'd be cool as hell.
I love the idea of having some younger characters sort of take up the mantle. You know, kind of show how they were impacted by the adults that saved the world from Thanos and everything.
And because just practically everybody's getting older.
Yeah, that too. That too.
I think all of our heroes are in their 40s except for Scarlet Witch. Crap. Why am I crap? Anthony Mackie, he's in his 40s. I think Sebastian Stan's about to be 40.
Yeah.
So everybody that's left is kind of getting up there. So
I wonder what they're gonna do. This is completely off topic, but what are they gonna do with the Hulk now that he's got a busted ass arm? He's just kind of about. I guess we'll find out in She-Hulk. We'll find out in She-Hulk.
Yeah, he'll definitely probably have, if not a cameo, maybe even a supporting role in She-Hulk.
I hope so. I want to see more of him and what he's doing. Hulk's my favorite comic character, by the way. I don't know if I've announced that on the show before. But let's get back to the review of Falcon.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that basically.
One more final point. I really liked the title card in the last episode that changed the name of the show from Falcon and the Winter Soldier to Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second though? Bucky's whole arc in this show is that he's no longer the Winter Soldier.
It's still called the Winter Soldier.
It's still called the Winter Soldier. I don't really know what to call him though. I mean, there's White Wolf, like the Wakandans call him, but like the show also kind of goes out of its way to make the whole like you shouldn't call a character by their race with the whole like people call Sam Black Falcon and he's like no, I'm just Falcon. So calling Bucky White Wolf is kind of like
that's the Black Falcon.
It's like what do we call Bucky now? Can we just call him Wolf? Is that open? Is that trademarked?
Maybe he'll take back the title of Winter Soldier, because that's what happened in the comics, because he became Captain America after Steve was killed.
Yeah.
After the fallout of Civil War in the comics, and then after Steve came back, because comics everybody comes back, he becomes Winter Soldier for good. So maybe he'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna keep it. Don't know why he'd want to, but
that is one thing that I'm appreciating about the MCU that we can't get in comics is that like when a character dies here, they can stay dead. Like
they can.
We don't have to worry about like Tony Stark coming back or Captain America coming back. I mean, I guess technically a few characters have come back. We're gonna get a Loki show even though he's dead, and we did time travel shenanigans to bring him back. But
yeah, the show looks good though. I mean, and because I like these last two.
Yeah,
like I'm probably gonna like Loki because it looks good. So.
It's gonna be fun. You want to move into review?
I do a little bit of final thoughts.
Okay.
Overall, even though we have some, even though I have some issues with the show, I think it's overall a success. I think it mostly nails what it's going for, just with a couple of caveats of like underdeveloped character here, maybe didn't do enough with this plot element over there. But that's about it. I'd say I don't want to compare it to WandaVision because they're completely different.
They are. Don't, because they are completely different. Because WandaVision is very much about like an individual exploration of the impact of grief on a person, whereas this one is much more about the social political commentary of like what does it mean to take up an American legacy. Even though there's individual character arcs and narratives in it, there's much more social commentary in this one than there is in WandaVision.
Well, in that case, I think it's a great expansion of the two main characters, and I think it's a great sequel to Civil War and the Infinity Saga.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I think I applaud them for trying to tackle such heavy themes in this show. I think they dropped the ball in a few instances, but you gotta take those chances. To have these kind of discussions, sometimes you're going to mess up. And the fact that they attempted some heavy stuff, even though, unfortunately, these aren't always popular opinions that we have, that, like, racism still is an important social thing that we have to talk about. They do. And I think they do a good job of addressing most of them.
And I think the show probably might get even better on rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not going to take a lot of extra time to rewatch it. It's only 6 episodes, so you can knock it out in a couple days again.
I hope all of these shows just end up being miniseries. I don't really want like a long-running MCU show that's like, oh god, I have to keep up with this for multiple seasons. I like the fact that these are just like, here's like 6 to 12 episodes of something that you can pick up and watch, and it's basically a long movie, except you get like sort of the weekly vibe of a TV show where it's like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. I like that.
Yeah, I do think just all the teases that this show has, it has way more than WandaVision. I think it could benefit from a second season, but I think most of what it sets up is probably going to be carried over to Captain America 4.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing, too, is that if we get too if we have too many long-running TV shows also going alongside the movies, and it's like, MCU narrative is already hard enough to follow as is, We're basically already watching a television show in the form of movies that come out. So, the MCU is a TV show. Weird.
Yeah, the MCU is a cinematic TV show.
Yeah, we just
while
wrapped
the
up.
TV shows are just long movies.
Yeah, we just wrapped up a season 1 with the Infinity War saga, and now we're actually getting TV shows out of the big TV show that we were watching for like a decade. So,
oh, Marvel, I have my problems with you, but you're not the first of your kind, but you've gone the farthest with the formula than anybody ever has. So
yeah,
I applaud you.
All right, I'll give a grade before we jump into the review. I should do the grade first. I would say a joke about Tyler not grading things, but he graded 2 separate things in this episode, which is making me wonder if he's a Skrull. So I'm going to give Captain America and the Winter Soldier 40 out of 50 stars on a field of blue.
I like what you did there.
Yeah,
very patriotic.
Anyway, review time.
Review. Let's do it.
All right. This show got 89% from critics on the Tomatometer on Rotten Tomatoes and a 73% audience score. So audiences actually like this show less than critics.
I wonder...
It's probably for the reason that you...
Tangent time? Yeah. Tangent time, though?
Yeah.
It's well known, documented, that people bomb the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that is from people, because I've seen it online, from people pissed that the show is quote unquote too woke.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into that, unfortunately.
I figured we would.
I think some of these people are the same that I've picked last time. I just go through like the top general audience reviews, but I've kind of picked up some serial critics who seem to be judging all of the stuff we watch. So this one is from Ryan C. Ryan C. says, the story is about as complicated as an episode of Blue's Clues, and even then Steve was a stronger character. 1 out of 5 stars.
There's nothing to review for that review. It's just a snarky...
It's nonsense.
It's just a snarky bit of nothing that doesn't mean anything.
If anything, it's a little too complicated. Like, I'm still not entirely sure what the Flag Smashers were trying to do. Aside from, like, they're like, we're gonna start a revolution. It's like, okay, but like, what are you doing? You just kind of run around and do violence every now and then. If anything, it's convoluted. It's not undercomplicated. Even then, Steve's a stronger character.
Yeah, if anything, it juggles a bit too much at times.
Yeah. Axel M says, I guess it was fine, but it's just the MCU formula. 3 out of 5 stars.
At this point, if you're not on board with the MCU formula, then why bother watching it? I mean, because, hey, I can sympathize, because I went through a period where I was just kind of over everything MCU.
Yeah. I
was that guy for a while. But, I wouldn't say this is just MCU. I mean, we just talked about it for 2 hours. I say it does a lot more with its themes and narrative than a lot of other MCU properties have in the past.
Definitely theme-wise, it pushes a lot harder than other MCU films have. I think narrative-wise, it is sort of similar in just, like, here's a bad guy, and we're going to have these guys make some snarky comments, they'll encounter him a few times, and then we'll have a big finale. But, like, that's kind of all action movies, too. I was going to say, I can see where this is coming from, especially piggybacking off of WandaVision. Because like I said earlier, WandaVision tries a lot harder to sort of break the mold, like, in format from the MCU. Whereas this one is very much, like we've said, like a sequel to Civil War.
Yeah. It's, you mentioned it before, I think. It's not quite as action-packed as you would think.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think it's kind of different from a lot of the movies. Because you would expect, a Falcon and Winter Soldier movie to be, this balls out nonstop action thing, and there's really not much action in it. There's 2 huge action scenes that bookend episode 1 and 6, and some mild level skirmishes sandwiched between them, but a lot of it is very just dialogue and plot driven more than anything.
I can see people complaining about it because it's slow. Like I said earlier, I think the dialogue is actually better than the action sequences because they hit on some heavy themes and they make it entertaining between these characters. Sam and Bucky have like a great sort of like playfully antagonistic dynamic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see the argument that it's too slow. let's get into one of the shitty comments. This is from Ben S.
Here we go.
Yeah. Why do they have to take it to a racial place? It's really weird that writers and actors are obsessed with the color of people's skin. We're looking for a fun action show, and what we got was a preachy monologue that seemed very wrapped up in morals, and not particularly wrapped up in strong action, comedy, and exploring the nuances of human nature. 1 out of 5 stars. Is race and...
Not exploring the nuances of human nature?
Yeah. Is that just outside of your wheelhouse? And let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt. I think with a lot of these things where people are like, oh man, why do we have to listen to another woke race thing? I just want a fun action series. I think with a lot of these people, they see this stuff on the news all the time, they read all these articles and see all this stuff, and they're just exhausted. They're just exhausted with seeing these things, and they think like, man, I don't see it in my personal life all the time, so why do I have to think about it? Just because this stuff isn't impacting you directly doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. These are themes that we have to talk about because unfortunately they still matter. Race is still a factor. Trying to pretend we're colorblind, we're not colorblind.
Yeah, and do we really have to mention everything that's gone on this past year as far as race relations are concerned?
Yeah.
And I don't want to give this particular person the benefit of the doubt because I think he's arguing in bad faith. Yeah. I don't think he's just a downtrodden person who's beat down by all the bad stuff in the world and just wants to see some light entertainment. I don't think that's where he's coming from. I think where he's coming from is, man, I don't want this stuff in my comic book stuff because I don't agree with it. Yeah. It's because he doesn't like it. It's because he's probably confronted with things he doesn't want to be confronted with. Because of his own, insecurities and, dare I say, prejudices.
Willful racial ignorance, probably. Mm-hmm. But we're not psychoanalysts, so we'll move on from you, Ben S. We won't pick on you too long. This one confused me. Zach H says, loved the show and how it ultimately had a conservative message. The show was a little slow and was political. In the end, the new Captain America rejects the idea that we need to be a borderless and that America is bad. Sam stands up for America, even though our past hasn't always been great.
That didn't happen at all, though.
Zach, so, buddy... Maybe this kind of ties into what I was saying earlier, where they kind of do the do better thing. Maybe there's an argument that it kind of muddied the thing, but that's not the message of this show at all, bud. It's
an exact opposite of what Sam's own words are.
It's
maybe he saw a different version of the show in a different reality.
Yeah, it's not. We should accept America for all its flaws. It's we should demand that America does better. And try and fix its flaws. That's the message here, bud. Ultimately, conservative message of no.
I've noticed a trend lately with the rise of more conservative thoughts in relation to not just the world, but when talking about media. I've noticed a lot of conservative people trying to twist film and television messages and themes into it's actually conservative. Yeah. They did it. They swear up and down that The Incredibles is conservative. What else?
I kind of want to hear that argument, even though that's a tangent.
Soul. They say that Soul's conservative because it pushes a pro-life message. That's a conversation for another time.
Adding both those movies to the list. Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of a popular thing now with conservatives to be 10 Hollywood movies that are secretly conservative. And it's I don't want to. Yeah, I do. Screw it. I don't care. I don't.
We don't have an audience yet. Get rid of them.
Yeah. I don't want to straddle the fence. No. It's screw conservative thought. I don't care. It's outmoded. It's outdated, and you're not as cool as you think you are.
I told you. I won't say who it was, but there was someone I went and saw Zootopia with when it came out in theaters, and they completely missed all of the racial messaging in it. I was like, man, that was a movie. They addressed a lot of stuff there. He's like, what are you talking about? There's just a fox and a rabbit, and they were police and stuff. I'm like, did you miss the whole allegory for like everything race and racial? What did you miss? Like how?
I hate insulting the audience. I do. Anytime somebody just like, insults the audience, we're like, they're just too stupid. They're just lowest common denominator. But at the same time, every once in a while, I'll come across a take that's so just what that I can't help but think like, what is this person thinking? What is their problem? How could they miss this that much?
You're not just wrong. You're stupid. Oh boy.
But this next.
Yeah, sorry, Zach, you're off the mark there. Randy J says, I'm tuning out with everyone else fed up with the script writing. I want a break and some fun entertainment to get lost in and not be bludgeoned by childish cartoon morals. But Disney and the MCU has decided to go with identity politics. Fed up. 1 out of 5 stars. That's a lot similar to Ben, except a little more on the nose. Yeah.
And even though I just said, like, I didn't want to give that other guy the benefit of the doubt, I do kind of see how somebody, depending on how their argument is framed, just being like, not wanting to be reminded of all the bad shit happening in the world, but that's not the position these people are coming from.
Or not wanting to hear these kind of messages from multi-billion-dollar corporations who are also endorsing the kind of problems that they address.
That's fair.
Like, if you want to point out the hypocrisy, that's one argument, but if you're just like, I don't want to hear these messages, then it's like, that's not a valid argument.
Yeah, it's an opinion I can understand and respect if it's coming from the right framework. Like what you just said, like, this huge conglomerate Disney that owns half the world, preaching these messages. Like, if you're coming at it from that perspective, I can see how you can find it hollow, disingenuous. I think that's fair. But if you're just coming at it from, oh God, I'm sick of all this wokeness and I'm sick of all this politics in my entertainment, then that's just not the way, in my opinion, to come about it. And that's how you have people assume that you have not so savory beliefs.
Yeah. Let's get to some people who liked the show, because most people did like it. Kira A says, notable performances from all the actors as well as in-depth commentaries on racism in America, trauma, and what it means to be a symbol for a better tomorrow. 5 out of 5 stars.
That's pretty succinct. That's pretty much how I feel about it.
Hey, Kira,
said far better.
You're gonna steal our job. We've been talking for an hour and 50 minutes about this, and you just said everything that we did in a sentence.
Far more eloquently.
Yeah. Shut up, Kira.
I don't talk good.
Yeah. I talk long and loud.
Talk long, not good.
Yeah. Ricky P says, blending relevant social commentary with gritty action sequences and the entertaining chemistry that made the characters popular, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier continues to solidify Marvel's reputation on TV. 4 out of 5 stars.
Another good blurb. Can't say I disagree.
Maybe the action sequences kind of disagree with. We talked about those.
But they do have their gritty moments, like them breaking John Walker's arm.
Yeah, and him killing that guy.
And him killing that guy, that's some pretty hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
That we haven't seen much of like that in the MCU.
Yeah. And this is another one that confused me. Joss R says, it was okay, brought nothing new from your average action show, and was overall slow-paced, really slow-paced considering it has a few episodes. 0.5 out of 5 stars. What do you think the word okay means, Joss? If somebody walked up and slapped my mother, I'd give them a 0.5 out of 5 stars.
Nonsensical rating aside, what did he say? Like, it offers nothing new?
Average action show, overall slow-paced, considering it has a few episodes. Which we kind of talked about.
Yeah.
I just love it when they have, like, this sort of, like, generic criticism, and it's like, it's not too bad, but... And then you get to the end, and it's like, what is this number you've attached to it, though?
That's kind of a nothing burger review. in my opinion. Not much to say about it.
Yeah. 73% audience score. That's kind of surprisingly low. I mean, maybe not surprisingly low. Or unfortunately, not surprisingly low. People still have problems accepting that these are things we need to talk about, that these are important messages.
Yeah, and you might think that, hey, we're being presumptuous and thinking that it's low because of people being assholes about it being a lot about race and social issues.
I went through the reviews, so
that's kind of exactly why it is that low.
Yeah, I looked at the reviews, like a good 30 to 40% of them were just, why is it so woke? Why is there so much social? It's like, that's what art does. Art comments on society. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, actually, but that's how you evaluate art, is what it says about the human condition.
Oh, man.
But
people.
Overall, another great piece of media that tackles some really heavy issues. I really enjoyed this one. I think I like Superman Smashes the Klan more just because I think it's a little it addresses some issues in some ways that are a little more nuanced and also a little more...
Well, it's a more elegant story. It's not as complicated.
Yeah, it's not as complicated of a story. It functions as a Superman introduction, origin story, and like a good moral message. But, I mean, this is still a really good show, and I like it as well. Yeah, we've already given it a score and everything. Any final thoughts on Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Speaking as a recovering anti-MCU person...
Oh, you gotta do recommendations, too.
Oh, well, I hate to say it, but I unfortunately haven't read any of the Sam Cap comics. I've wanted to, I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Wow. We'll have to read a few and then come back to our audience so that they don't hate us.
But if you want Captain America comics that have the same general tone as Winter Soldier, Civil War, and Falcon and Winter Soldier, Ed Brubaker's extended run of Captain America is pretty much universally considered the modern Captain America. It's one of the most acclaimed modern comic book runs ever. So just start there and just go on forward. That eventually will lead to Sam Cap.
My problem is I see a lot of comic panels on social media and stuff that are just taken out of the comics, out of context, and they'll show me a lot of great moments, but I won't know what they're from because they won't tag them from which particular comic I can look up. Because I remember a great one where some character who has basically Captain America's star on his chest, tattooed into his skin, is beating the crap out of Cap, and he says something about why won't you help me fight these dirty immigrants or something, and Cap's my parents were immigrants. It gets into all these kind of messages about what it means to be American and everything. I can't remember what it's from because nobody ever posted the original source material, so little sidebar there. If you're going to post comics or any art form, cite the source, both for my sake and for the original artist's sake, just so that they can get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, that should go without saying, but that's just kind of an ongoing problem with people sharing other people's art. They don't credit like they should.
Artists work hard to provide you with the things you love. Give them the credit they deserve so that they can keep making more of it. But I think that's about all we've got for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Unless you had any last thoughts after I've asked for last thoughts maybe 3 times now.
Yeah, it's been a lot of last thoughts.
Yeah.
See, can I yammer on any more than I have?
I mean, it's already almost been 2 hours, so...
This seems to be our kind of baseline.
Yeah, we edit it down. We'll edit it down.
Or I'll just not edit it and just release as is for the complete raw dog experience.
Please don't do that. Especially that opening moment where we were talking about, I think, you pooping.
Well, okay, I can get that.
We'll take out your embarrassing parts, but when I say something stupid, it's fine.
That's 2 minutes gone there. Okay, final thoughts, not about the show itself, but Marvel just released a trailer kind of hyping the next phase of everything.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No.
God darn it, you.
I am surprisingly behind on Marvel stuff. Like, I got you back into it, and then I kind of dipped for a while, and now you're kind of having dragged me back into it, even though I've enjoyed all of it.
Well, they've released this trailer. It's kind of a celebration of what the franchise has been up to this point, and, here's what to look forward to in the future. And it's also kind of like a, hey, things are slowly getting back to normal. We'll see you at the movies kind of thing. And it made me surprisingly emotional.
Yeah.
Because, they show they show Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, some of his cooler parts.
That's a tragedy.
And like that kind of hit me. I was just like, oh God. And then they showed a clip of live audience reaction for Endgame when the portals open up and Sam says on your left and everybody's
oh my God, that's such a good scene.
And then
they waited a decade to pull the whole Avengers Assemble line, and it paid off in spades.
Yeah, they show everybody cheering for the on your left and for Cap catching Mjolnir and saying Avengers Assemble and everybody going nuts. And it made me nostalgic, stirred up the emotions, hyped me for the franchise, and they revealed all the titles for the upcoming movies. Black Panther 2 is called Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever, which is a cool subtitle.
What are they... did they film Chadwick Boseman's scenes already? Are they replacing him? Or what's going on with that?
You are out of the loop.
I am very out of the loop.
No, Ryan Coogler, who wrote and directed the first one.
This is a new section of our podcast called Out of the Loop, where Tyler explains things that should be obvious to me if I kept up with the internet, but instead I've been looking at memes and not paying attention.
It's okay, it's endearing. No, the writer-director of the first Black Panther, Ryan Coogler, he's just been plugging away at the script for the second one, and then Chadwick Boseman passed away. And they're of course, that movie was huge, a huge cultural impact. So everybody was like, what are they going to do? I hope they don't CGI him. Are they going to recast him? Are they not going to recast him? And Kevin Feige came out and said that they're not going to recast Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. They're not going to recast T'Challa. And they're obviously not going to digitally recreate him because they think that is completely out of line. So it stands to reason that a pre-existing character is going to take up the mantle.
Have they said who?
They haven't said who.
I hope it's a sister. That'd be cool.
Yeah, most people think it's Shuri. I would be okay with it being Shuri, but I kind of want it to be M'Baku. Oh yeah. To be honest with you, I think that would be really cool. So
all the Wakanda characters are great.
It could be Okoye, the leader of the Dora Milaje.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
I love all of them. They're so fun, badass.
Yeah, Black Panther 2 is gonna be really bittersweet because I can't lie, I kind of wanted them to recast T'Challa because I think the character is very important and there was more for his story. There was more story for him to tell. Yeah. But I can't knock them for saying that we don't want to. No. So who knows what Black Panther 2 is going to end up being about? But they revealed the title for that movie. They also revealed that the sequel to Captain Marvel is called The Marvels, which means it's a team-up movie with Carol Danvers and Kamala Khan. Oh, yeah. And most likely, crap, why am I blanking on her freaking character? She was one of the best parts of WandaVision.
Monica.
Monica Rambeau.
Yeah. So
that immediately made my ears perk up for that because Captain Marvel was completely nyeh, in my opinion.
Oh, we just lost 200,000 more viewers that we don't have already. We'll talk about all of the MCU films at some point. Maybe do a Marvel May or something at some point down the line.
But just that title reveal, The Marvels, and then it's a team-up movie, makes it sound so much more ambitious. Yeah. Than what the first movie ended up being. So I'm actually tentatively excited for that.
Oh, this isn't Marvel, but are we getting a sequel to Shazam at any point?
Yeah, they're going to start
Captain Marvels.
The original Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to start filming that pretty soon, actually.
I love that his whole family are Shazams now. That's great.
It's called Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
Ooh. Well, Let's talk about Shazam. God, our list keeps growing. Tyler, our backlog alone will take us forever. How are we going to keep up
all night? Let's record multiple episodes.
How are we going to keep up with both new things coming out and all of the old things that we already love? Why didn't we start this in like 1900 before film became a medium?
They released the logo and the release date for Guardians 3, which doesn't come out till 2023, and I can't.
We got to get back to the point where Marvel was putting out 4 movies a year.
God, what a freaking 180 I did.
I know.
I was like, I'm so burnt out. It's nothing but Marvel, too much content, and now here I am bitching and moaning that I gotta wait so long for Guardians.
2020 made you realize how much you missed them. Oh boy, but I think that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. As always, thank you all for watching or listening. This has been Tongue and Geek with 2 more white guys on the internet sharing their opinions on pop culture. And as always, don't tell my mom.
Don't tell his mom.